So, you want to know about the breakup? The one that went viral? The one my tech bro husband, Josh, designed to be the ultimate public humiliation. Yeah, that one. Everyone thinks they know the story. They saw the headlines, the memes, the late-night talk show jokes. Savage tech CEO breaks up with wife via city-wide scavenger hunt. Everyone thought it was hilarious. A masterstroke of cold, efficient cruelty. What they don't know is the story after the story. They don't know that the platform he built to destroy me ended up destroying him. He handed me the weapon, loaded it, and pointed it right at his own perfect, curated life. And the funniest part, he never even saw it coming. This isn't just the story of how my marriage ended. This is the story of how I took the narrative back. My name is Lucia, and for 7 years, I was married to a man who loved an audience more than he ever loved me. Josh wasn't just a husband. He was a brand, a walking, talking LinkedIn profile, with a dazzling smile and a charisma that could power a small city. He was the founder of a buzzy startup called Connect, a social mapping app that was supposed to revolutionize urban exploration. In reality, it was just a glorified scavenger hunt generator. But he sold the dream so well that venture capitalists were practically throwing money at him. He spoke in taglines and lived his life like a perpetual product launch. Our life wasn't a partnership, it was a performance, and I was his most essential and most invisible supporting cast member. The beginning of the end started on a Tuesday. I remember the air in our minimalist, glass-walled apartment in Austin felt different. It was thick with a cloying, manufactured excitement that always signaled Josh was about to unveil something. He stood in the middle of our living room, backlit by the skyline, holding his phone like it was a sacred artifact. "Lucia, babe, are you ready for the greatest date night of your life?" he'd said, his voice booming with the forced enthusiasm of a game show host. I tried to summon a genuine smile. With Josh, you always had to match his energy, or you'd be accused of killing the vibe. "What did you cook up this time?" He just grinned, that wide, camera-ready smile that never quite reached his eyes. "It's a surprise, but it's big. It's Connect big. I've designed a private hunt, just for you. The Lucia edition. It'll take you on a journey through our history, all our favorite spots, and the final clue. Well, let's just say you should wear your best dress." A little knot of unease tightened in my stomach, but I pushed it down. This was a classic Josh move. A grand, public-facing gesture that was more about showcasing his own cleverness than about genuine intimacy. For years, our most romantic moments had been conveniently shareable, perfectly optimized for an Instagram post. But a part of me, the foolish, hopeful part that had fallen for him all those years ago, still wanted to believe. Maybe this time it was different. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting, of proving he still saw me, the actual woman, not just the wife-shaped accessory in his life's keynote presentation. So I played along. I put on the red dress he liked, the one he'd once said made me look like a valuable asset. I downloaded the special version of the Connect app he sent me, and the first clue popped up on my screen with a flourish of digital confetti. It was a picture of the quirky little coffee shop where we'd had our first date. The hunt was undeniably brilliant. I had to give him that. Each clue was a clever riddle or a personalized puzzle that led me across the city. The first location had a barista holding a cup with my name and a QR code on it. Scanning it unlocked a photo of us on that first date, a genuine moment of happiness that felt a lifetime away, followed by the next clue. It led me to the bookstore where he proposed, the trail along the river where we'd trained for a marathon, the rooftop bar where we'd celebrated his first round of funding. At each stop, there was a little digital reward, a memory packaged and presented. But as the afternoon wore on, the initial flicker of hope began to die. The whole thing felt hollow. It wasn't a journey through our history, it was a journey through his carefully curated version of it. The marathon we trained for. I remembered the endless mornings I got up at 5 a.m. to run with him, only for him to spend the whole time on his phone, taking calls with investors. The proposal? He'd hired a photographer to capture it, and we had to do it 3 times to get the lighting right. I also started noticing something else. People were following me, not in a creepy way, but in a detached, amused way. They were holding up their phones, recording. At the third stop, I saw a guy I recognized as a tech blogger live streaming. A cold dread began to seep into my bones. This wasn't a private hunt. It was a spectacle. He was beta testing a new feature, a celebration hunt, and I was the star guinea pig. My heart, our memories, our entire relationship, it was all just content for his app. But I kept going. What else was I supposed to do? Stop in the middle of the street and have a breakdown? That would only give them better footage. So I smiled. I played the part of the adoring wife on a romantic adventure, and with every step, the knot in my stomach twisted tighter. The final clue led me to Zilker Park, to the crest of a hill overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. It was beautiful, poetic even. In the distance I could see the lights of a fancy restaurant, the one he'd pointed out last week, saying we should go there sometime. This was it, the grand finale, the romantic dinner. My phone buzzed. The final clue was unlocked. It wasn't a riddle, it was just a set of GPS coordinates, pointing to a specific spot under a massive ancient oak tree, a few hundred feet away. As I walked toward it, I saw it. A small, sleek, black pedestal, the kind you'd see in a modern art museum, and on top of it, a single glowing QR code. My heart was pounding. This was the moment, the culmination of his grand gesture. I smoothed down my dress, took a deep breath, and aimed my phone at the code. The app whirred for a second, the camera focusing, and then, the final message appeared on my screen. It wasn't a dinner reservation. It wasn't a love note. It was just 3 words, stark and brutal in their simplicity, displayed in the clean, minimalist font of his company's branding. We're done. That's it. That was all it said. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process the information. I refreshed the app. The words were still there. We're done. I looked up from my phone, half expecting him to jump out from behind the tree, shouting, "Gotcha." But there was nothing. Just the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hum of city traffic, and the soft, unmistakable sound of a few people, the bloggers and the curious onlookers who had followed me here, snickering. The humiliation was a physical force. It hit me like a wave, hot and suffocating. My vision tunneled. The sounds of the park faded into a dull roar. I was standing on a hill in the middle of a public park, in a fancy dress, holding a phone that had just informed me my marriage was over, while strangers documented my heartbreak for their social media feeds. It wasn't a breakup, it was a public execution, and that's when the second wave hit me. The anger, a white-hot, glacial rage that burned away the shock and the shame. He didn't even have the decency, the basic human courage, to do this to my face. He'd turned the end of our life together into a viral marketing stunt. He was so obsessed with his own narrative, with being the disruptor, that he'd disrupted his own marriage with the cold and personal efficiency of a software update. My hands were shaking, but not from shock anymore. It was from pure adrenaline. I looked at the pedestal, at the glowing QR code that was broadcasting my deepest pain to the world, and then I looked at my phone, at the app he'd used, the Lucia edition, and I remembered something he had long forgotten in his ascent to tech godhood. Before Connect was Connect, it was just an idea he'd struggled to execute. For almost a year, I was his unpaid, uncredited co-developer. I was the one who built the foundational architecture, the one who debugged his sloppy code late into the night, the one who designed the security protocols he'd complained were overly complicated. He was the visionary, the salesman. I was the one who actually made the damn thing work, and in my haste to help him, to be the supportive partner, I'd left myself a backdoor, a master administrator key, buried deep in the legacy code, something he'd never find. He didn't know it existed, or more likely, he knew and assumed I was too much of a pushover, too broken, to ever use it. He made a critical mistake. He chose a public park with free citywide Wi-Fi for his final cruel punchline. He thought he was being clever. What he was really doing was giving me an opportunity. Standing there, under that ancient oak tree, with the last rays of sun disappearing, a new plan began to form in my mind. A cold, clear, and perfectly logical plan. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. At that moment, it was about survival. It was about taking the story he had written for me and setting it on fire. I turned my back on the pedestal and walked away, not looking at the people filming me. I found a bench, sat down, and pulled out my laptop from the bag I'd been carrying all day. My fingers flew across the keyboard, muscle memory taking over. I connected to the park's Wi-Fi. I accessed the app's source code through the back door I'd built years ago. His new security was slick, but it was all surface level. He'd built a beautiful new facade, but had never bothered to check the foundations. My old admin key still worked perfectly. I had absolute control. I could see everything. The user logs, the live analytics. I could see the unique link tied to that specific QR code on the pedestal. And with a few lines of code, I changed its destination. I wiped his 3-word message from the server. I took the power he had tried to wield against me, and I took it for myself. He wanted his breakup to go viral. Fine. I was about to give it a whole new meaning. He thought he was writing the ending. He had no idea I was about to write an entirely new book. The immediate aftermath was a blur of surreal, disembodied pain. I made it home to our apartment. His apartment, I corrected myself in a daze. The place was unnervingly empty. A suitcase was gone from his side of the closet. His toothbrush was missing. It was so clean, so sterile. The finality of it was suffocating. I sank onto the cold leather sofa, the red dress feeling like a costume from a play I'd been forced to perform in. And that's when my phone started to explode. It wasn't just texts from friends asking if I was okay. It was notifications, tags, mentions. The story was already breaking. The tech blogger's stream had gone viral. Tash Connect breakup was trending. There were screenshots of the QR code's original message. There were videos of me, standing alone on that hill, my face pale in the twilight. The comments were a horrifying mix of pity and mockery. OMG, savage. That's just cold. Lol, what did she do to deserve that? But overwhelmingly, the consensus was that it was, in its own sociopathic way, a stroke of genius. Josh was being lauded as some kind of edgy innovator in personal relationships. My humiliation was his triumph. I curled up on the sofa and let the sobs come. It was a raw, guttural sound of a heart, not just breaking, but being methodically dismantled for public consumption. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every time he'd made me feel small and insignificant over the past 7 years, it all came rushing back. The past wasn't just a memory, it was a deluge, and I was drowning in it. I flashed back to our 3rd anniversary. I had cooked his favorite meal, a complicated paella that took hours. He'd come home late from a meeting, looked at the table, and said, "Great, carbs." He then proceeded to take a picture of the dish, post it with the caption, "My wife is trying to kill my productivity #keto life," and then ate a protein bar for dinner while I sat there in silence. I remembered the time I got a promotion at my old software engineering job, the one I eventually left to support his dream. I was so proud. I'd called him to share the news, and his response was, "That's nice, babe. Hey, can you listen to this pitch? I need to know if it sounds disruptive enough." He didn't ask about my new title, my new salary, my new responsibilities. My success was an inconvenient interruption to his own. The worst was the gaslighting, the slow, insidious erosion of my own reality. He had a way of twisting everything. If I was upset that he'd canceled our plans for the 3rd time in a row, I was being needy and didn't understand the pressures of a startup environment. If I questioned a major financial decision he made without consulting me, I was being hysterical and didn't have a founder's mindset. He'd say things like, "I think you're remembering that wrong," or "You're being too sensitive," with such calm, infuriating certainty that I'd started to believe him. I started to think I was the problem, that I was too emotional, too demanding, not supportive enough. He was the brilliant son, and I was just a needy little planet, lucky to be in his orbit. He hadn't just broken up with me, he had spent years breaking me down, piece by piece, until I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Lying there on the sofa, the glow of my phone illuminating my tear-streaked face. I saw the pattern with a horrifying clarity I'd never allowed myself before. This scavenger hunt wasn't an anomaly, it was the culmination. It was the most Josh thing he could have possibly done, turning our life into a game where he made all the rules, and the only way for me to win was to be a graceful loser. My phone rang, cutting through the haze of my misery. It was my best friend, Maya. I almost didn't answer, but my thumb hit the green button out of instinct. Her voice was tight with fury. "Lucia, tell me you're okay. I'm on my way over. I saw the post. I swear to God I'm going to ruin him." Maya wasn't just my best friend. She was my rock, my voice of reason. She was a fiercely intelligent digital privacy lawyer who had hated Josh from day one. She'd always seen through his charismatic facade, calling him a narcissist in a hoodie. I had always defended him, telling her she just didn't understand him. Hearing her voice now, so full of righteous anger on my behalf, was like a splash of cold water. "I'm not okay," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I know, honey, I know, but you're also the strongest person I know." He did this because he's a coward. He did this publicly, because he needs an audience to validate his pathetic existence. Don't let him have the last word. Don't you dare. Her words cut through the pain and hit something hard and solid inside me. Resolve. She was right. He had designed this to be a monologue, his final grand statement. He expected me to crumble. He expected me to disappear quietly, another broken prop from his last production. He was counting on my silence. "He doesn't know I still have admin access to the app," I said, the words coming out flat and cold. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in Maya's legal mind. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "The legacy key. I thought he'd have patched that by now." "He's arrogant," I replied, sitting up. The tears had stopped. The shivering had subsided, replaced by a strange, icy calm. "He never believed I was smart enough to build it, let alone remember it, or be bold enough to use it. He thought it was his genius, and I was just the help." "Lucia," Maya said slowly, a dangerous smile in her voice. "What did you do?" "I changed the link," I said. "The QR code on the pedestal in the park. It doesn't go to his breakup note anymore." "What does it go to?" A flicker of an idea, born in that moment of rage in the park, now solidified into a concrete plan. It wasn't just about deleting his message, it was about replacing it. It was about hijacking the platform he had built on my back and using its viral power for something else. Something meaningful. "I'm not sure yet," I lied, not wanting to say it out loud until it was perfect. "But I'm going to need your help." "You have it," she said without hesitation. "Whatever you need. Legal advice, a bottle of wine, an alibi. You name it." He wanted to make this public. Let's make it public. We hung up, and I stood up from the sofa. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the glittering lights of the city. He had sent me on a scavenger hunt across this city, turning my memories into a spectacle of his power. He thought he was closing a chapter. He thought he was delivering the punchline. But I was still standing, and I was about to change the entire joke. The breakdown was over. It was time to build. It wasn't about revenge, I told myself, clutching the phone in my hand. It was about justice. But deep down, a small, cold part of me knew that was a lie. It wasn't about revenge until it was. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in controlled chaos. While the internet was feasting on my public shaming, Maya and I were building a war room in her apartment. Her place, a cozy, book-filled sanctuary, was the complete opposite of the cold, minimalist box I had shared with Josh. It felt safe. It felt real. The first thing we did was secure my position. "He's arrogant, but he's not stupid," Maya said, pacing in front of a large whiteboard she'd dragged out of her home office. The second he realizes something is wrong with his precious app, he's going to try to lock you out. We need to work fast, and we need to be thorough. She was right. My backdoor access was my only leverage. I spent the first few hours, not just changing the QR code's link, but fortifying my position. I delved deep into the app's architecture, the digital house that I had helped build. I created a new ghost administrator profile for myself, one with higher level permissions than even Josh's own account. Then, I began systematically revoking his privileges, not all at once, but slowly, subtly, like a rising tide. I started with the non-essential stuff, the kind of things he wouldn't notice right away. Access to the user analytics dashboard, the ability to push server-side updates. I was dismantling his control panel, one wire at a time. This is where my foresight, my intimate knowledge of his creation, became my secret weapon. Josh was the front man, the visionary. He understood the user experience, the marketing, the sizzle, but he was sloppy with the details, the back end, the stake. I knew every vulnerability, because I had been the one to warn him about them. I remembered a specific conversation we'd had late one night, a year before the app even launched. Josh, this password recovery protocol is too simple, I'd told him, pointing at a block of code on my screen. A single-factor email authentication. It's not secure. We should implement two-factor authentication, at least for the admin accounts. He'd waved me off, distracted by a new mock-up for the logo. Babe, it's fine. We need to prioritize a frictionless user experience. Security is a friction point. No one's going to hack us. We're a tiny startup. He hadn't just ignored my advice. He'd been condescending. He'd treated my professional expertise like a quaint hobby. It was that exact vulnerability, the simple email-based password recovery for his own master account, that I now prepared to exploit. I didn't use it yet. I kept it in my back pocket. It was my trump card. While I was a ghost in his machine, Maya was handling the legal side. She sat at her dining table, surrounded by piles of documents from my divorce lawyer, her brow furrowed in concentration. This is interesting, she said, tapping a paragraph on a financial disclosure statement. He's listed Connect as 100% his own intellectual property, premarital asset. But he founded it 6 months after you got married. And I have your old employment records. You were working full-time as a senior engineer, while also, and I quote from an old email he sent you, providing essential foundational development supports for his project. He always said my work was just helping out. I said, the phrase leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Helping out doesn't involve writing 40% of the initial code base. Maya shot back, her eyes glinting. In Texas, that's not just helping out. That's communal property. He didn't just use your emotions. He used your uncompensated labor to build his entire company. He thinks he owns 100% of this app. He's wrong. This was the plausible inaccuracies that would become a cornerstone of my strategy. The legal intricacies of intellectual property in a marriage are messy and debatable. But Maya's assertion gave me a surge of confidence. The app wasn't just something he'd used against me. In a very real sense, I had a claim to it. This wasn't just emotional justice anymore. It was financial. The plan itself came together in pieces, on Maya's whiteboard. We knew we had to replace his breakup message, but with what? My first instinct was to expose him, to post screenshots of his cruel texts, his manipulative emails. It's tempting, Maya said, tapping a marker against her chin. But it becomes a he said, she said. He'll just call you a bitter, scorned wife. He'll play the victim. We can't fight him on his own turf. He's better at PR. We have to change the game entirely. She was right. If I made it about me, about my pain, he could spin it. But if I made it about something bigger, that's when the final piece clicked into place. I remembered a visit we'd made to a charity gala a few months prior. It was for a local women's shelter, the Haven House, which provided resources for victims of domestic violence. Josh had insisted we go. It was good for his public image. He'd written a big check, posed for photos with the shelter's director, and then spent the car ride home complaining about the cheap wine. But I remembered listening to the director's speech. She spoke about all forms of abuse, not just the physical kind. She spoke about emotional abuse, financial control, isolation, and public humiliation. Every word she said felt like a page torn directly from my own life. I'd felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. "The Haven House," I said out loud. "That's it." Maya looked at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Lucia, that's brilliant." It was perfect. It wasn't a direct attack. It was a pivot. It elevated the conversation from a petty, viral breakup to a serious issue. It would recontextualize his actions, not as a savage prank, but as a classic example of the kind of insidious cruelty that shelters like Haven House fight against every single day. The next step was to create the content. I couldn't just link to their donation page. It had to be personal. It had to be powerful. I spent a whole afternoon writing a script. I didn't mention Josh by name. I didn't need to. The entire internet was already doing that for me. I spoke about the subtle signs of emotional abuse. I talked about feeling like you're constantly walking on eggshells. I talked about your partner making grand romantic gestures that are more about their own image than about you. I talked about being made to feel small so they can feel big. I talked about a scavenger hunt that leads not to a celebration of love, but to a moment of profound public humiliation. I recorded it on my laptop, right there in Maya's apartment. I wasn't wearing the red dress of shame. I was wearing a simple gray sweater. I wasn't crying. My voice was calm, steady, and strong. I looked directly into the camera, not as a victim, but as a survivor. At the end of the video, I put up a link, not to my own GoFundMe or a revenge site. It was a live-streamed link. I called the Haven House. I spoke to the director, a wonderful woman named Maria. I explained the situation, briefly, without all the gory details. I told her that a viral event was happening, and that I had the power to redirect thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, of viewers. I told her I wanted to set up a live, 24/7 donation tracker, and link it directly to a live feed of not their residence, for privacy, but their welcome area. A warm, safe-looking room, with a simple message on the wall: "You are not alone." Maria was hesitant at first, understandably wary of being embroiled in a public drama, but I sent her the video I'd made. When she called me back, her voice was thick with emotion. "Do it," she said. "This is the story we try to tell every single day. That abuse isn't always a black eye. Sometimes, it's a QR code." The final piece of the plan was the hidden leverage. My trump card. Once the new link was live, and the story started to shift, Josh would inevitably panic. He would try to regain control of his app. He would try to change his password, and that's when my trap would spring. I wrote a small script that would intercept his forgot password request. Instead of sending a reset link to his email, it would trigger a final, automated action. It would change the password to a randomly generated 64-character string, change the recovery email to an anonymous, encrypted one that I controlled, and then, for good measure, permanently delete his master admin profile from the system. He wouldn't just be locked out, he would be erased. The night before we went live, Maya and I sat on her balcony, overlooking the quiet street. The city seemed a world away. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. I took a sip of wine. I felt a strange sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The fear and the shame had been burned away, leaving something hard and resilient in their place. "He thought he could delete me with 3 words, I said, looking up at the stars. "He has no idea that I'm the one who holds the power to delete him." It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the space I had been forced to vacate in my own life, and my plan was now perfect. The moment I pushed the changes live was deceptively quiet. It was 3 in the morning. I was sitting at Maya's dining table, the glow of my laptop illuminating my face. With a final click, the new script was executed. The QR code in Zilker Park, the one that was still being visited by morbidly curious internet sleuths, no longer pointed to a dead link with a cruel message. It now redirected every single phone that scanned it to a page hosting my video. And below my video, the live donation tracker for Haven House, which we had preceded with a few donations from ourselves and our friends, ticked to life. I closed my laptop. There was nothing more to do but wait for the sun to rise. I woke up a few hours later, not to an alarm, but to the frantic buzzing of Maya's phone on her nightstand. She came into the living room, holding it out to me, her eyes wide. "It's starting," she said. The first ripples appeared on niche tech forums and subreddits. Someone posted, "Weird thing happened. Went to see the #connect breakup QR code, scanned it, and it took me to this video about emotional abuse." The initial reactions were confused. Is this part of it? Is this some 5D chess marketing stunt? Maybe the wife hacked him. But the video was too earnest, too raw to be a marketing ploy. My calm direct-to-camera address was the complete antithesis of Josh's slick, ironic brand. And then there was the donation link. People started clicking it. The donation tracker, which had started at a few $100s, began to climb. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. The live feed of the shelter's quiet, welcoming lobby provided a stark, sobering contrast to the drama. By 9 a.m., the narrative had started to shift. The original tech blogger, who had live-streamed my humiliation, posted a follow-up. "Okay, this #connect breakup story just took a wild turn. The original message is gone. It's been replaced by a powerful statement from the wife, Lucia. I'm rethinking my initial take on this." He included a link. That's when the dam broke. The #connect breakup was hijacked. It was no longer about a savage prank. It was about #team Lucia. My video was being ripped and reposted everywhere. My words were being quoted. People were sharing their own stories of emotional abuse, of partners who gaslit them, who made them feel small. The comment sections, which hours before had been filled with laughing emojis, were now filled with messages of support, outrage, and solidarity. The internet, in its chaotic hive mind way, had turned on Josh. They saw the scavenger hunt, not as clever, but as calculatedly cruel. They saw his public breakup, not as edgy, but as a pathetic cry for attention from a man who couldn't stand to be out of the spotlight, even for a moment. He hadn't just broken up with me. He'd provided a textbook example of the very abuse I was now talking about. He had built his own cage. I watched all of this unfold from the safety of Maya's apartment, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. I was watching my life, my pain, be reinterpreted and rebroadcast to millions. But this time, it was on my terms. The first sign of Josh's panic came around 11 a.m. Maya got a notification from a monitoring tool she had set up on the Connect app's server. "He's trying to log into the admin panel," she said, a grim smile on her face. "Access denied." I could picture him perfectly, sitting in his sleek, new bachelor pad, probably a sterile Airbnb somewhere, staring at his laptop in disbelief. He'd be annoyed at first, thinking it was a server glitch. He would try again. Access denied. The annoyance would curdle into confusion, then into a dawning, sickening dread. He would have opened his own app on his phone and seen his name being dragged through the mud. He would have seen my face, calm and composed, speaking words that dismantled his entire persona. He would have seen the donations to Haven House climbing past $50,000. His viral moment, his brilliant PR stunt, was mutating into a monster that was devouring him whole. The panic texts started coming to my phone. "Josh, what the hell did you do? Josh, Lucia, this isn't funny. Change it back right now. Josh, you're ruining my company, my reputation. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I didn't reply. My silence was more powerful than any words I could have written. Then came the calls. I let them go to voicemail. He left a string of increasingly frantic messages, his cool, confident tech bro voice cracking with desperation. "Lucia, pick up the phone. We need to talk. This has gone too far. You're being vindictive. You're destroying everything I've built, everything he'd built." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The final stage of his panic began around 2 p.m. Maya's monitor lit up again. "He's doing it," she whispered. leaning in close to her screen. He's hit the forgot password link. I held my breath. This was the moment my entire plan hinged on. The trap I had so carefully laid. I imagined him sweating now, furiously typing in his email address, expecting a reset link to appear in his inbox. But no link would come. Instead, my script would be executing in the background, a silent, digital guillotine. In the space of less than a second, his password was changed to an indecipherable string of nonsense. His recovery email was swapped, and his entire administrator profile, the one with his name and face on it, the symbol of his ownership and control, was wiped from the system he believed was his. He was no longer the owner. He was just another user, powerless. A few minutes later, a new email popped into the encrypted account I had created. It was an automated notification from the Connect server. Administrator profile, Josh Carter's has been successfully deleted. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding for 7 years. I was in complete control. The silent takeover was complete. He had built a digital kingdom to broadcast his cruelty, and I, the ghost in his machine, had just changed all the locks and thrown him out into the street. The panic was no longer his problem. It was about to become his new reality. The power shift was seismic. It was one thing to lose control of the narrative. It was another thing entirely to lose control of your creation. Josh, the man who lived and breathed his app, was now completely locked out of it. The viral phenomenon he had orchestrated was now a runaway train, and he was tied to the tracks with no way to escape. The fallout was swift and brutal. The first to abandon ship were his investors. By late afternoon, a prominent venture capital firm that had been his lead backer in the last round of funding released a public statement. It was a masterpiece of corporate damage control. We are deeply disturbed by the recent events surrounding Connect's founder. Our firm has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and behavior that does not align with our values. We are currently reevaluating our position. Reevaluating our position was corporate speak for we're pulling our money and running for the hills. Next came the tech community. The same blogs that had praised his savage breakup stunt were now publishing lengthy opinion pieces dissecting his toxic behavior. He was no longer a brilliant disruptor. He was a liability, a walking PR disaster. The headline on one of the most popular sites read, "The Unconnected Founder, How Hubris and Cruelty Killed a Tech Darling." But the most devastating blow, the one that truly signaled a full-scale exodus, came from his own family. This is where the subplot I never could have predicted began to unfold, courtesy of his younger sister, Chloe. Chloe had always been the quiet one in the Carter family, completely overshadowed by her brother, the golden child. While Josh was praised for his ambition and genius, Chloe was gentle, artistic, and perpetually overlooked. I had always liked her. I saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes at family gatherings, a quiet resignation to being the supporting character in the Josh show. She had sent me a brief, one-line text the day after the breakup. "I'm so sorry, Lucia. He's a monster." I hadn't thought much of it at the time. That evening, as Josh's world was publicly imploding, Chloe did something incredibly brave. She wrote a post on her own social media. It wasn't angry or vengeful. It was a quiet, sad, and powerful testimony. She wrote, "For years I have watched my brother Josh build his success on the backs of others, especially the women in his life. The way he ended his marriage with Lucia was not a surprise to me. It was a pattern. It was the same way he treated our mother, belittling her intelligence. It was the way he treated his old girlfriends, discarding them when they no longer served his image. The cruelty you all saw on display in a public park was the same cruelty I have witnessed in private my whole life. Lucia is not a scorned woman. She is a survivor, and I stand with her. She was the karmic agent I never knew I had." Her post was the corroboration that turned Josh from a one-time villain into a serial emotional abuser. It came from inside his own family. It was irrefutable. It was the nail in his coffin. Even his parents, who had always worshipped him, were forced to retreat. I could only imagine the frantic phone calls, the screaming matches. They were a family obsessed with appearances, members of the local country club, pillars of their wealthy suburban community. Their son hadn't just embarrassed himself, he had embarrassed them. Their golden boy had tarnished the family name. Josh, predictably, began to lash out. He couldn't attack me directly anymore. I was now a sainted figure, a champion for victims of abuse. The donation tracker for Haven House had just passed $250,000. Attacking me would be like attacking a puppy. So he turned his venom on the next available target, his sister. He tried to counter-manipulate, posting a pathetic, rambling statement, claiming Chloe was unstable and jealous of his success, and that I had poisoned her against him. It was a desperate, transparent tactic, and it backfired spectacularly. People saw it for what it was, a cornered bully trying to discredit the women he had harmed. He was alone. His investors were gone, his reputation was in tatters, and his own family was fractured. The digital world he had so masterfully manipulated had turned on him with a vengeance. He had built his identity on a foundation of public approval, and now that foundation had completely crumbled, leaving him in freefall. The final, desperate text he sent me came late that night. It was a complete reversal of his earlier messages. The anger was gone, replaced by a pleading, pathetic tone. Josh, Lucia, please, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I was an idiot, a jerk. I don't know what I was thinking. Just please, give me back control of the app. It's all I have left. It was a stunning admission. He wasn't sorry for the years of abuse, for the humiliation, for the cruelty. He was sorry because he was losing his company. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. His apology was transactional. He saw me as the final gatekeeper to his salvation. I stared at the message for a long time. The old Lucia, the one who craved his approval, who would have done anything for a scrap of affection, might have felt a pang of pity. But that Lucia was gone. She had died on that hill in Zilker Park. I didn't reply. I just powered off my phone, severing the last line of communication. He had become what he feared most, irrelevant. The power hadn't just shifted. It had been completely and irrevocably transferred. The family exodus was complete. His family of adoring fans had all packed their bags and left him alone in the house he built. The confrontation, when it finally came, wasn't a dramatic, shouting affair. It was quiet, pathetic, and deeply satisfying. A week after the takeover, my lawyer informed me that Josh was demanding a face-to-face meeting. He was trying to frame it as a necessary step in our divorce mediation, but we both knew what it was. It was his last, desperate gambit. I agreed to meet him, but on my terms. Not in a lawyer's office, not in a public place. I chose the lobby of the Haven House. It felt fitting. The place that had become the symbol of my new reality would be the stage for our final act. I got there early and sat with Maria, the shelter's director. The lobby was filled with light. On the wall, a large screen displayed the donation total, which had just surpassed $500,000. The place was buzzing with positive energy, with volunteers sorting donations and phones ringing with offers of help. It was a world away from the cold, performative life I had led with him. He arrived exactly on time. The man who walked through the doors was a ghost of the person I had known. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a nervous, twitchy energy. His designer hoodie looked rumpled. His face was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked small. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes darting around the room, taking in the donation screen, the bustling activity. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the old arrogance, a flash of indignation that I would dare to bring him here. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a raw, desperate need. "Lucia," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Josh," I replied, my voice even and calm. I didn't stand up. I made him walk to me. He pulled up a chair and sat opposite me, leaning forward conspiratorially. "We need to end this," he said, keeping his voice low. This whole circus, it's gone on long enough. You made your point. I just looked at him. I didn't say a word. My silence unnerved him. It was a new weapon in my arsenal, one he had no defense against. Look, he said, running a hand through his messy hair. I get it. You're angry. I messed up. The scavenger hunt. It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible joke that went wrong. I'm sorry. There, I said it. Now, can you please just give me back my company, his company? Even now, in the wreckage of his own making, his ego wouldn't let him concede the truth. It was never your company, Josh, I said softly. Not entirely. My uncredited work, my labor, my ideas, they are baked into the foundation of that app. Our divorce lawyers can debate the exact percentage, but the era of you claiming 100% of the credit is over. He flinched, as if I'd struck him. That's ridiculous. You're being vindictive. Am I? I asked, my voice still level. I didn't destroy Connect. You did. You used it as a weapon to publicly humiliate me. You created the spectacle. All I did was change the channel. I took the audience you so desperately craved and showed them something real. I took the cruelty you broadcasted and turned it into a $500,000 donation for women who have suffered at the hands of men exactly like you. I gestured to the screen behind him. He didn't turn to look at it. He couldn't. His face crumpled. The last vestiges of his bravado disappeared, leaving behind a desperate, pleading shell of a man. Lucia, please, I'll do anything. I'll give you a bigger settlement. Whatever you want. But the app, it's my life. It's all I am. And there it was. The pathetic, hollow truth. Without his company, without his public persona, he was nothing. A brand with no product. An empty vessel. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. That's the difference between us, Josh. My life is just beginning. Yep. Yours, the one you built, is over. This is your new reality. You're not a tech bro genius anymore. You're just the man who broke up with his wife using a QR code. That's your legacy now. You wrote it yourself. I turned and walked away, leaving him sitting alone in the lobby of the Haven House, a monument to his own failure. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of his irrelevance behind me. The confrontation wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. It was about me, finally and completely, logging out. The vindication wasn't in his defeat. It was in my own quiet, unassailable peace. It's been 6 months since that day. My divorce is final. As part of the settlement, a neutral third party was brought in to assess my contributions to Connect. In the end, it was determined that I was entitled to a 40% stake in the company. The first thing I did, as a majority shareholder, along with the very sheepish but now firmly anti-Josh venture capital firm, was to vote for his complete removal from the board and the company. The app itself is being restructured. We're integrating resources for mental health and domestic abuse awareness directly into its platform. We're turning it into something useful, something good. It turns out, you can build a business on something other than ego. I never hear from Josh anymore. From what I've heard through the grapevine, he moved out of state, trying to escape the shadow of his own viral infamy. He tried to launch a new startup, some nonsense about blockchain-based mindfulness, but no one would fund him. His name is toxic. His brand is a joke. He got exactly what he deserved: obscurity. As for me, I'm thriving. I took some of the money from the settlement and started my own small software consultancy, hiring brilliant women who, like me, had been overlooked and underestimated. My work is fulfilling. My life is quiet. I live in a small house with a garden. My best friend Maya is a regular visitor, and so is Chloe, Josh's sister. The three of us have formed an unlikely, unbreakable bond. We are a testament to the fact that the strongest alliances are often forged in the fires of someone else's toxicity. The other day, Chloe and I were having coffee, and she told me something that put the final, perfect period on this whole saga. She said that in the week after the story broke, their mother called her, weeping. She wasn't weeping for Josh's lost company or his reputation. She was weeping for Chloe. She said, "For years, I saw how he treated you. how he treated all of us, and I never said a word. I was a coward. Seeing what Lucia did, it made me realize we don't have to be silent. The power shift hadn't just happened to me, it had sent ripples through his entire family, forcing them to confront truths they had ignored for decades. So why am I telling you all this? It's not for sympathy, it's not for applause. It's because my story, in its own strange, hyper-public way, is the story of so many people who feel trapped by a narrative someone else has written for them. Your cage might not be a citywide scavenger hunt, but it's real. It might be a partner who subtly undermines your confidence, a family that dismisses your achievements, a boss who takes credit for your work. It's the slow, quiet erosion of your self-worth, and I'm here to tell you that you hold the power to change the link. You have a backdoor key to your own life. It might be a skill you've forgotten, a friend you haven't called, or just the quiet, defiant decision to say no more. Recognizing the abuse is the first step. For me, it took a grand public humiliation to finally see the truth that had been staring me in the face for years. But for you, maybe it can just be this video. Maybe my story can be the little bit of light you need to see the lock on your own cage. The tools of your oppression can become the weapons of your liberation. It's not about revenge, it's about rewriting the code. Thank you for listening to my story. The journey was painful, but the peace I have now was worth every single step. The Haven House and shelters like it all over the country are doing life-saving work every single day, often on a shoestring budget. If my story moved you, please consider finding a local women's or domestic violence shelter in your own community and donating. Even a small amount can make a huge difference. If you or someone you know is experiencing emotional abuse, please know that you are not alone and there is help available. And finally, if you have a story about taking your own power back, share it in the comments. Let's make this a space where we lift each other up. Your voice matters. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise.